Magavan and Melanine, and well met indeed. I am Arakir Galadirthan, the head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome back to Divide and Conquer as we continue on as not a campaign, but instead as Mordor in a faction overview. Now, points that need to be said at the start of each of these. First and foremost, this was recorded on the 13th of May 2017. Ergo, it is relevant to the build as it stands at the moment, which is the build towards version 2. This itself, of course, will not be the final product of version 2. Apologies for moving the microphone. There will likely be more changes here and there along the way, but it encapsulates enough of a change for most of the factions that I'm covering it now. Now, point of housekeeping, this very day I've recently purchased a brand new headset because the old one was uncomfortable and not wireless, and I wanted a wireless one and I wanted a better, more comfortable one. And a side note of that is that this one is incredibly noise cancelling, and so I sound to myself very quiet. So I may be overcompensating by shouting because I'm not sure how loud or quiet I am. So I apologise for that. So let's dive in with Mordor then, my second to least favourite faction. So I'm not going to know all that much about it, to be honest. No, I jest. I know enough as the mod leader, but also allow me to just again say that the Total War Centre, Total War Centre has currently got the modding awards for 2016 going on at the moment. There will be a link in the description below to the page relevant to Divide and Conquer if you wish to vote for them. Do note that Divide and Conquer were not included in the vote from day one, owing to just a minor clerical error. It was fixed the day after. But so in the list, it looks like there are 2 Divide and Conquers. So should you wish to vote for Divide and Conquer, we are the one at the bottom that says 1.1 submod. We are not the one that says mini submod 0.52. Do note that. So, the link is in the description for that. Right then, on with Mordor. So, the size of your domain and the initial army that you get. Well, the size of your domain is quite large as Mordor. In terms of geographical domain, you hold quite a lot. But in terms of actual regions, you don't hold that much. So, obviously, you'll hold all of Mordor, but this entire eastern side is split up between just 2 provinces. So a large chunk of Mordor is on the western side, where there's a lot of towns, but not very much land. Which is why, as we've seen in my recent Gondor campaign, Saragost is actually one of your most wealthy provinces. As you can see, Saragost is a wooden castle, and Barad-dûr starts the game as a citadel, the game's highest level castle, and they already earn the same amount of money. With Saragost only having potential to earn more and more and more once you get mines involved. So it's a very wealthy province, but the size of your domain is quite large. Now, the initial army can be gathered up. It is trash at the beginning, but you have, of course, got the Nazgûl, as we'll cover in a moment. So your army, whilst mostly being trash, you can establish a solid army going forward from turn number 2, which is where I always start these at. So your leader, your capital, your unique bodyguards, and your diplomat. Well, your capital is Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower. That is literally what Barad-dûr means. It means Dark Tower. And this is your capital. This is where your diplomat trains from. He comes from the tower itself. Diplomat. Along with Sauron's will. Now, your leader, this is something that it's unfortunately tied into the way our ring script works, and there's not really a way round it. So, unfortunately, your leader is Sauron. And for those that will hunt him down, so I'll show you how to do it anyway, you can find Sauron straight away from turn 1. But unfortunately, you'll find that he's locked in the top right-hand corner. Now, of course, in normal gameplay, you'll never go up there. You'll never command him. He'll never get troops. He'll never get adoptions. None of that. However, he is there. So do just note that a minor gameplay bug and gameplay immersion breaker is that Sauron does start the game on the map, but you just don't get him until you get the ring. I'm sure that there's a way we could probably send him off map at turn 2 and just bring him back on map later, but I'm not too sure with the scripting. So he is your actual leader, which means you cannot be regicided. You cannot be killed by regicide unless you let Sauron come back. And even then, I'm pretty sure you are immune to regicide killings, owing to the ring being tied to the ring. You have no family tree, though, as you'll note. So you don't have any... There are no sons, daughters, anything like that. So then, your unique bodyguards, we get quite a few. So you've got Gothmog over here, who is an orc, but has Morgul Chosen as his bodyguard. They're an anti-cavalry defensive spear unit. Each of the Nazgul have the Black Numenorians as their bodyguards, which are just a very powerful cavalry unit for you in the game. Now, the Nazgul, there is G. Indur Dawndeath. There is, of course, the Witch King of Angmar in Minas Morgul, who's also your faction heir, I believe. In Durthang, you'll find Ren the Unclean. In the Morannon, you'll find Akorahil the Blind Sorcerer. In Barad-dûr itself, you've got Uvatha the Horseman. And I think that is it. Yes, it's orcs in all the other places. And if you're wondering why you don't have all 9 Nazgul and you only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's because 6, 7, 8... No, there's one missing. There's definitely one missing because 7, 8, and 9 all belong to Dol Guldur. So number 6 is knocking around somewhere. I wonder where he is. Oh, Dwar of War. Oh, he's in Tharband. There we are. That's bloody miles away. What's he doing all the way over there?
No sleeping here.
So in Tharband you have Dwar of War as well. So there's your unique bodyguards. The other generals that you get, the other orcs, they've all got the standard Uruk bodyguard, which is your default bodyguard unit for your generals when they come of age or when you train them. Because remember, you can now train generals from your capital cities. And this is an attempt to make the AI train more generals because they get killed off by regicide a lot. So, those are your uniques and your armies and whatnot. So, Rebel Expansion then, you can head out into the north if you want. If you decide not to go for Gondor, cutthroat-like, then you can head into the north. You've got Gelebrin at the start, just outside of the Black Gate, and then off into the heartlands of Rovanion, with Ostinaru, Karvarad, Dorthalu, Dor Norhak, all of the above. Because remember, this is how the game looks at turn 2. So, every faction has already completed its auto-expansion. And this is how the game currently lies. So, you have plenty of opportunities to head north. But that's the only direction. If you head to the west, you'll come to Gondor straight away. And whilst there are a couple of towns to the south, you will then meet Khand almost straight away. And of course, you're landlocked in the east. So your neighbours and your diplomacy then. Well, your diplomacy, we'll start with that because neighbours is bigger. You are allied to every enemy that is around you. Every enemy of the free peoples, rather, that is around you. So the Easterlings are your allies, Mirkwood are your allies, the Misty Mountains, Khand, and Harad. Do note that you're not allied to Umbar. And indeed, in version, when I was going to do the bit modding this week and I didn't. But Umbar are going to start allied to no evil faction in the game. It allows them, the AI and a human player, to play them a little bit more expansionist and regardless of alliances. So, but do note that as Mordor, you're not allied to Umbar. Now, your neighbours, of course, are pretty much everyone I've just mentioned. So, Khand, Harad, Rune, and then, of course, Gondor. Mordor, everyone should know a lot about the Mordor geography because they're heavily featured in the films. So, your economy and your buildings. Well, you're an orc nation, so you don't go above castle. You don't get stronghold, the third tier of castle. It is unavailable to you. You do, however, get all the levels of the towns because they are not stone-built towns. You basically just make your encampments bigger and bigger and bigger by breeding and breeding and breeding. But the plus side of this is that it means that you get access to large cities. So you're only restricted in the castles. Now, your building that's required to get a large city comes from the building ground at first, and then it becomes a carpenter's hut, and then it becomes a carpenter's guild house. And this is required to build the large cities. So you'll need that. The guilds that you get are only the Fighter's Pit. The guilds, or the guild that you get, is only the Brawler's Pit, Brawler's Hall, Gothmog's Hall, which is the Fighter's Pit. And this gives you a melee weapon bonus and experience bonus as well. So Mordor can make some pretty good money owing to the resources in their region, as we're on the economy section. As I've already mentioned, Nirn is the breadbasket of Mordor, and this is reflected with quite a few little farms dotted around there. But additionally, Saragost earns a lot of money. So from Saragost, you can do wondrous things, absolutely wondrous things. So it's easy to make money as Mordor. An additional reason why it's easy to make money is because the Morannon, Durthang, Cirith Ungol, Minas Morgul and Barad-dûr are already as large as they can be, which means that they unlock certain levels of things like markets, for example, that you don't get elsewhere. So it's very easy to make money as Mordor, especially with your cheap-ass units. You can really swamp the battlefield. So, scripts for Mordor. Well, of course, the main script is the ring. The ring will pop up from, I think, around turn 10 now. We said it to be a little earlier. It comes in quite quickly. And if you go and get the ring, bring it back to Barad-dûr, then Sauron will spawn. That's it. That's the extent of that script. Now, if he dies, I'm fairly certain you cannot do the script again. I don't think it repeats. So you get him once and once only. However, you can use him as much as you like. And that's all the ring script entails. But there's an additional script for Mordor, and it's just called The Tribes. And what this allows is the same thing with Rhûn and Harad. If you are allied to the Variags of Khand, you can build a Variag mustering ground in Barad-dûr. This allows you to recruit and train lots of Variag units. Mordor being, of course, the pin, the center point of the forces of the Shadow. But in extension to this, from the gates of the Black Gate, from the very gates themselves, you can train some runic units and some Haradrim units. And these are good units, very, very good units. As you can see, they are post-barracks event units from Rhûn, available straight away. And they just supplement you, and they give you that link to Rhûn and Harad that we all know, again, from the popularity of the films. So there is a connection to the allies around you. Now, the Black Gate, the training from the Black Gate, I don't think you need to be allied to Rhûn or Harad. You can get those units even if you're at war with them, because assume they're a separate tribe. However, the Variags you do need to be allied with to build the mustering ground. Now, if you don't wish to ally with Khand, you want to take them out, you can attack Khand and build an alternative variation of the mustering ground in Khand, which has major problems for your city's upkeep and things like that. But it allows you to train more troops and more readily available. So you not only do you get more options, but you also get those troops more often. So it's quite useful. Quite useful indeed. Do note, I've already mentioned it, but do just have a cheeky little look at all the palm trees that have since been added to the regions with the deserts. It looks a lot better. So, it's easy to make money as Mordor, and script-wise, there's nothing too major other than the ring, getting Sauron back, and, of course, training troops from the Morannon and the Barad-dûr. Now, in terms of garrison, you'll get a garrison anywhere where Melkor's Shadow has a homeland, so you get it in basically every region of Mordor, every region of Dol Guldur or southern Mirkwood, the Misty Mountains, and Angmar. You will get garrisons in all of those places. You will also get a garrison in any rebel region that is currently rebel once you have upgraded the town level by 1. So in a place like Dor Norhak, which is already a castle, you'll never get a garrison here because you don't get a stronghold, so you can't upgrade this settlement. So that's how the garrisons work. So then, key map changes for Mordor since version 0.52. Well, there have been, of course, since 0.52, the regions around Rovanion have been split up, so there's a bit more fighting there. Khand now actually get involved. Khand come up the side of the mountains and they head up north through there. Harad go through the middle and take the crossings. And Umbar hopefully will come up the coast and hit Dol Amroth as well. Now, this has a major downside. That's all I say for the map changes. I don't think there's many more, really. If there are, they're minor. But there is a major downside here that has been pointed out many, many times. And this leads into the final point, tips and difficulty. Mordor is one of the game's easiest factions. Arguably the easiest. I mean, I know Lindon are really powerful, really safe position. You can get a good economy. You can get a lot of troops. You can head out with impunity. But Mordor have a good position. They can make a lot of money. They can get a lot of troops. And your chief enemy is attacked by 3 other people. Although Umbar don't really get involved with Gondor. So it's only really Khand. But Gondor are having to fight Khand, Harad, and you. Which means that you can easily walk them. So Mordor, unfortunately, is a very easy campaign. But then I don't really see that as being a problem. In the tale of Lord of the Rings, of course, Mordor were absolutely stomping Gondor for a long time. And it was only the return of the king, the power of the Oathbreakers, the kind of resurrection of Rohan from the grip and tide of Isengard that all culminated in the downfall of Sauron. And then eventually, of course, the Hobbits. Let's not forget that had the Hobbits... Let's assume that everything else had happened as normal. If the Hobbits hadn't have dropped the ring into Mount Doom, the Free Peoples would never have won the Battle at the Black Gate if there had even been a Battle of the Black Gate. And further to this, Mordor had a hell of a lot more strength that it had yet to muster. So Mordor's campaign should be easy, because at the point of this, at this time in the Third Age, 2980 through to 3019, Mordor are all powerful. There really isn't anyone that can stand against them. And it's only odd additions to the story, such as the Oathbreakers, such as Aragorn coming out of exile, and of course the massive impact of the Hobbits, that actually turns the tide. So I unfortunately am never really going to put too much effort into making Mordor hard. Mordor are the evil nation, are the Linden of the evil world, if you will. Their campaign is easy, it's a doddle, it'll get you used to the game. You can fight in some key, really important settlements which everyone enjoys, like Minas Tirith and Minas Morgul and Henneth and Noon, things like this. But don't come to Mordor expecting it to be hard, because it is not. Right, so that concludes the first half of the Mordor overview. I'm just thinking if there was anything modding-wise I can show you before we kick off. Oh, Caras Falathrum's now called Strondost, which is a... I really like this word, but it's an absolute butchering, because Strond is Icelandic for coast, and Ost is Sindarin for town. So it means coast town, but it's two totally different languages joined together. But I much prefer it to Caras Falathrim, because that was far, far, far too Western Elven. Whereas the Avari had their own language. They wouldn't really be Sindarin here, I don't think. So. But Santenwy and Coruscant I've allowed to stay, because I'm so used to their names. But I never liked Falathrim, so... It's called Strondost now. Or Ströndost, I believe, is how you pronounce the O with the dots. Is it Ern? I'm not too sure. So that's maybe a little bit of a modding change, but otherwise I don't think there's been anything major since the Harad overview, or Rune overview of last week. It would have been way better if this had been the Rune overview, because next week we're starting the Rune campaign, but we'll get some testing in. Anywho, that will conclude the first half, so I will see you on the battle map side. Welcome to the battle map side. So, quick overview of Mordor then shows that they have an awful lot of infantry. They've got quite a few archers, but do note the top tier are AOR. And there's virtually no cavalry, apart from the trolls. So, and trolls aren't very good at mopping up fleeing units, and they're also, despite being very good at breaking an enemy line, they're not all that great at sort of the morale shock, because the charge doesn't kill too many. But the beasts are there as well. So you've got elephants. So you've got elephants in abundance, but no real cavalry. Now, do note that, of course, I've included the troll catapults just to show that there are troll catapults, and the two bodyguards we'll get onto at the end. Also, just do watch out. This is the second time now that I've had to set this up, and I've had a similar issue before where Mordor, a moment ago, it just crashed for absolutely no reason. I was moving the Olokai, and the game crashed. And additionally, when I did the Rune overview, or Harad overview, one of the two, where I fought against Mordor at the end, they also crashed then, and I had to reduce the numbers. So do just note that Mordor seem to have a high propensity to crash if trolls are present. And that may just be each person's system plays differently. So, Mordor have only got two new units from version 0.52, the Temple Knights and Temple Guard. Or Temple Marksmen, they should probably be called, because those two are too similar, really. I think the Beasts are the Beasts new from 0.52 as well, actually. So maybe those three. Oh, and the Host. But other than those, nothing new. Excuse me, sorry. So, apart from the 4 new units, they have no new units. Alright, so Mordor, an overview of Mordor then is trash. Their units have low morale, low attack, low defense, low everything, but they have a lot of numbers. They are very similar to the Misty Mountains in how they play, in that the bulk of their army just relies on sheer numbers, and then in the late stages of the game they have a few things that are actually really quite good and do a lot of damage. And Mordor are the same in the Misty Mountains in that respect. So, your first units that you're going to come across then are the Orc Band and Orc Raiders. These are your real trash. These are the Mordor version of Snagger. Couple of attack points, couple of charge, terrible defense. Do note that Orcs get a bonus in snow, so they fight better in the winter time and in perpetual snow maps in the north. But otherwise, as you can see, generally poor morale and poor everything across the board. But they are very cheap. Mordor are also very cheap. with the Orc band actually being just one of everything. They literally are just trash. Pure undead trash. Not undead. Pure there to die trash. However, at this early sort of militia tier, there's also the Orc Maulers. And Orc Maulers are, whilst having a low defense of 5, they're effective against armor with a 5 attack and a 6 charge. So they're going to do quite a bit of damage. Very good strike infantry in the earlier stages of the game. Should probably have been in the second tier, really. Do note that, once again, the gap between the tiers, which is here, is represents a jump in stats, not necessarily the barracks event. Now, with Mordor, it does line up almost perfectly, but there are 1 or 2 units that are available before the barracks event, despite their stats being up here, so do just watch out for that. So in the militia tier, then, to round it out, you also get scouts, and Orc scouts are poor archers. 2 of everything except for 3 defense. Standard poor archers. They are slightly better than Snagger, so you do at least not have that absolute abysmal tier that the Snagger are, but they're still not very good. So moving on to sort of a more mainline troops then, this is why the Orc host was added, because I've seen people ask for them to be removed, but they won't be. They're a sword and board kind of equivalent for the Morannon Guard. So the Morannon Guard are a shield unit available everywhere despite taking their name from the Morannon, which literally means Black Gate, if you're wondering. Their attack is 3, their defense is 9. They've got reasonable stats. They will at least hold the line a bit better than anything that's come before. And when supported as well with the Orc host, who have similar sort of stats but slightly more aggressive, then you've got some reasonable, dependable line troops and support on the flanks and whatnot. And that is the purpose of the Morannon Guard and the Orc host. Now, they are also supported by another tier of archers, just purely called Orc archers. And they are, again, just slightly better than the trash before them, but still not outrageous. Now, one thing definitely to note with all Orcs is that there are 3 versions of accuracy. Now, this isn't displayed here. You only ever hear low, average, high, very high, exceptional. However, so if there was a human unit, an elfin unit, and an orcish unit, and they all had low accuracy, then do note that the orcish unit would actually have extra low accuracy. The human unit would have what we would call low accuracy, and the elf unit would have high-low accuracy. So for every tier, there are 3 denominations, with an orc being worse in every stage than anyone else, a human being the actual middle, and an elf being better. So an elf and an orcish unit that both have low accuracy, the orc will actually have even lower accuracy than the elf. That is what I'm getting at. So orcs are terrible accuracy. Their arrows are not very accurate, so despite the fact that they do reasonable damage, there's quite a lot of them, it's still not going to do too much damage because they're going to miss a lot. Which is a bit of a pain. So that's Mordor before the barracks event mostly, and certainly in the jump. So in the early game, you've got an awful lot of units that just do nothing. They don't do nothing. They're just not very good. As many of you have seen, and many of you will know from fighting Mordor, the early game units of Mordor are a breeze. But the problem comes in that Mordor can train an awful lot of them. So you're fighting 3 sort of battles just to defend a single location, and it's no sweat off Mordor's neck. But you're really having to scrimp and save to get your troops together, and that's Mordor's victory, and that's their plan. Numbers. However, Mordor, unlike the Misty Mountains, do have a clear strength in the late game, and this comes mostly from their AOR, but also from their mainline Uruks. Now, do note that Uruks and Uruk-hai are not different things. It's just a different way of saying the same word. So Uruk-hai is the full name, and Uruks is what it's shorthanded to. For example, the full name of the country in which I live is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but we just call it the UK, and it's exactly the same thing here. So that's obviously just a lore point, but I see a lot of people ask if Uruks and Uruk-hai are different things, and they're not. So, the Uruks of Mordor are actually very, very good. And when I say very good, you have to take into effect a lot of things from the campaign map coming in here. They're very readily available. They are very cheap for their stats. And that is why they're so good. So even though their stats are still pretty average, they're actually a lot better than you'd think because you can train them so easily and they will replenish quickly. But there are 3 tiers of the Uruks, or 3 versions, and that is the Uruks themselves, which is just sword and board. They're just dependable sword and shield units. You'll note that a lot of orcs have an impetuous morale response, which means A, they might charge without orders, and B, they can actually deal with morale shocks a bit better than other nations, but their overall morale starts lower than everyone else. So it kind of offsets it to make it the same. As you see, Mordor are key candidates for fleeing. But if there's an actual general present, then morale shocks don't have as much effect on Mordor, which is just a nice little touch. Right, additionally, and one of the best units that you get are the Uruk Halberds. Now, do note they use a halberd animation, so they're not as good as pikes, but they are still good. And they have a 6 attack, 13 defense. They are really good halberd units. These are Mordor's silent killers. So unlike archers, which are most nations' silent killers, the Uruk Halberds are Mordor's. They will kill so many enemies if they are left unchecked, if they're not flanked, shot with arrows, or attacked in the rear. If the enemy just charges them head on, then they will get an incredibly high kill-death ratio. They're very good, is what I'm getting at with those. But you're also supported by Uruk archers, the first and only real dependable archer unit for Mordor that's available everywhere. Now, with a 5 missile, 5 melee, 12 defense. Same sort of stats as before and the others as well. And slightly better accuracy and range as well. So you've got some good archers there. They will do damage, which is nice. And also coming in this first stage are your first set of trolls, the mountain trolls. I believe we've seen these before with the Misty Mountains, maybe, or are they possibly only Mordor? I can't remember. But either way, they're trolls. Usual spiel with trolls, they cannot run away. They are infantry, they are not cavalry. They can therefore climb ladders. They can operate siege rams. They can climb siege towers. They are not affected by stakes, pikes, or spearmen in a negative way. So they are infantry. That is always said. I'm not going to explain every single time why they're infantry. Just know that they need to be infantry, and they are infantry. So do note that. But they do still have the knockback and charge strength that you want. And the first unit of them that comes are the mountain trolls. So then we come to Mordor's upper tier. Now, all 4 of these units are AOR. They are only available in 1 location each, actually, which is quite a pin. Or possibly 2 with a Morgul. And these are broken down into a strike unit, a defensive unit, a standard unit, and an archer. And they are as follows. The Morgul Chosen we'll start with first. Now, Morgul Chosen, as you might imagine, come from Minas Morgul. They are the evil counterpart of the Minas Ithil Guardians for Gondor, and in fact, every good nation. Almost all good nations can train Minas Ithil Guardians now, by the way, just a little additional touch. They have a really good defense of 20 for an orc unit. Their attack isn't very good because they're spearmen, and that's how the game plays it out, regardless of historical effect. But they are dependable. They are really dependable. Sorry, I've hit the desk. And for Mordor's troops, that is really important. They will often be last ones alive. Their morale is still only good, though. So this is your uber elite tier, and your morale is still only good. Most factions at this tier have exceptional and normally locked morale. So you'll note that even in your absolute best stages, you're still not going to win in one-on-one combat. You're still hoping for numbers. But these units will certainly help anyway. You've also got Sauron's Will. Now, Sauron's Will only come from Barad-dûr, and they are outrageously aggressive units, as you can see. 13 attack, effective against armor, they frighten the enemy, and they inspire your allies. They are really useful unit to have on the field. Their defense is 20 as well, but note that that is broken down with 13 armor and 7 defense, as opposed to the 5 defense, 11 armor, and 4 shield of the Morgul Chosen, which means that Sauron's Will are more susceptible to arrow fire than the Morgul's Chosen. But they're really good. They are really good. They are quite pricey, though, actually. So they're the first one that's going to make you think, oh, that's expensive. But then they only come from Barad-dûr. But they're available from turn 1. Very, very, very slow replenishment. And then after the barracks event, they speed up. Now, coming out of the Dark Tower, it's this separate building you've got to build in Durthang, are the Temple Knights and Temple Guard. And this is we finally caved and allowed you to train Dark Numenorians, and that's all these are. They're just dismounted Dark Numenorians. Now they are a strike infantry again, wielding a 2-handed sword, but they aren't effective against armor. But their attack is very high, their charge is very high, and their defense, crucially, is very high. They are your most well-defended unit, not taking into account beasts or Sauron. So really, really solid unit. They will last on the battlefield. They are not pitiful, disgusting, filthy orcs. They are excellent morale, Dark Numenorians from the south, Blood of Numenor runs in their veins, and they will fight to the last. Now, do note, though, that they're not locked morale, so they will break, because they are only humans, but they have an exceptional morale to boot. So this is basically Mordor's best ground unit. And they are supported by Mordor's best ranged unit. Well, really only really solid ranged unit. Their missile attack is 8, owing to the Numenorian steel bows that they use. They inspire nearby troops. This is Mordor's stake unit. So I told you they'd be rare now. This is the only unit for Mordor that can place stakes. Now, given that you only have one pike/halberd unit, whereas a lot of factions have either 2, 3, and normally one pike and one kind of halberd, your biggest weakness comes from that you can barely counter cavalry. Like, you've got spearmen, yes, and spearmen are better against cavalry than anything else, than like a sword unit or an archer. But you've only got one unit that can place stakes, and it's incredibly rare. You've only got one pike unit, the real killers of cavalry. And you've only got a few spear units, and they're all very low tier. So Mordor can easily be killed by cavalry. So do watch out for that if you face Rohan or you turn against Khand, because both of those have an abundance of cavalry, and you'll really struggle to kill them. However, back to the Temple Guard. The Temple Guard then, so their defense isn't as good as the Knights, their attack isn't as good as the Knights, the charge isn't as good, but they have 8 missile damage, which is really very good. They have exceptional accuracy, 230 meter range, 32 missiles. They are considered rangers. And as many of you will know, all rangers conform to a sort of set pattern, making them the best unit. They tend to be the best archers for their nation at any tier, even when the elites come in, because rangers tend to be more readily available. It varies from faction to faction. So Temple Guard, very, very powerful. Temple Knights and Temple Guard you're going to want in your army if you are really fighting a very important battle. Say the Siege of Minas Tirith, the capture of Osgiliath. Like, you're killing off an enemy general. These units will help immensely. But also at this late tier, and what makes Mordor really shine, of course, are both the Ologhai, screaming at us there, and the Great Beasts of Gorgoroth, looking like funky rhinos. So we'll start with the Ologhai. Ologhai, just a much better version of a troll. So there's the original troll, 40 attack, 12 charge, 33 defense. We jump up to 45 attack, 14 charge, and a 38 defense. So just better all round. They also have more hit points. They have 1 extra hit point, and they have a few more... No, sorry, they're identical. I'm looking at this one. So again, they're trolls. Again, they're infantry. They're just really powerful. You use trolls to break an enemy line. You don't tend to use them in prolonged melee. They're the ultimate cavalry unit, basically. The enemy is defending a point. You want to break the middle of the enemy so you can either get to the archers at the back without having to flank round, or you can't meet them like head on, like say they're pikemen or something like that. Then you send in the trolls. They cause complete disarray to the enemy line, and then you punch through the gap created by the trolls. That is their purpose. But they're also pretty good, of course, as cavalry. So they'll flank well, they'll attack in the back well, all those kind of things. But your actual dedicated cavalry, the only dedicated cavalry you've got, which is an elephant, and that is the Great Beast. And as I say, these are elephants. The gentlemen on the back throw javelins off the little wooden boxes they've got there. So they're a javelin throwing elephant unit, and they're very, very good. And these are used as elephants. So these will take a lot of damage from pikes. They will take damage from spearmen. They'll take damage from armor piercing a lot. They are immune to stakes, because all elephants are immune to stakes, interestingly. They just destroy the stakes. So stakes are not a problem, but you don't want to really charge these against enemy pikes, because whilst they will disrupt the enemy line, once the pikemen stand up, they get a huge bonus against elephants. And with their large hitboxes, they can be attacked very easily. So you do have to watch out for them. They're very much like the chariots or the Mumakil. If used correctly, they will annihilate the enemy. However, it's very easy to take your eye off of them, forget them for one moment, and come back and realise they're all dead, because they're really easy to be killed. So they've, in the same way that I described the Mumakil or the chariots, they're incredibly good, but they're also terrible. So it's really, they're very micro-intensive normally. You will also note that they have unwavering morale, but not locked, so they will run away. They inspire nearby troops. And the last thing to note that affects both the Great Beasts and the Mumakil is that they can run amok. And this means if their morale breaks, they, rather than just flee, they start just running anywhere and attacking anything, including your own army. So many of you will know that feature anyway from Rome and Medieval, where elephants can run amok, and the Great Beasts of Mumakil can do this as well. So you do want to keep your eye on them, is the crux of that issue. The troll catapults I'm sure I covered with the Misty Mountains, so just note Mordor can train troll catapults. They are just good catapults, and then once they're finished, you get a unit of cave trolls or mountain trolls. So to end then, your 2 bodyguards. Well, first of all, let's do your generic. This is the Orc bodyguard, and this will be the bodyguard of any general you adopt or that comes of age, if that even happens with Teutonic trees. They have an 8 attack, 18 defense, 3 charge. They're good units. They're effective against armor, which gives them a really good aggressive nature. But there's not very many of them. They're 78, so you do want to be cautious. Mordor's bodyguard isn't going to be at the front of your army winning the wars because there's just too few of them. You want to send in the trash and have these on the flanks, things like that. And for the Nazgul, then, you've got the Black Numenorians. And they make that screaming noise because that's how voices are done in the game. So if you want the Nazgul to sound like a Nazgul, you have to make the Nazgul's unit sound like a Nazgul. This is why we cannot give unique voices to every hero in the game, because every hero would need to have their own unit, which is a huge waste of unit slots. But that is why the Black Numenorians don't sound like this. They sound like this. Because they are Nazgul. Something I've just totally realised I forgot to say as well. In the campaign half of this video, another script that I didn't mention is that your Nazgul do respawn. Your Nazgul will respawn indefinitely so long as you hold Barad-dûr. I totally forgot to mention that, and someone will post a comment about it before watching it to the end, which will annoy me, I'm sure. So if a Nazgul dies 10 to 15 turns later, 1-5, so 10 to 15 turns later, they will respawn at Barad-dûr. You'll have your Nazgul back. That will continue so long as you hold Barad-dûr. And if you're playing as Mordor, you'll never not hold Barad-dûr. So it's a simple script. And it means you can be really blasé with your Nazgul because you'll know their real spawn. So, and anyway, the Nazgul always come back with Black Numenorians. And this is their bodyguard. They have an 11 attack, 7 charge, 27 defense, inspire and frighten. And they have locked morale. So the Nazgul will never flee, which is a real pain. They fight to the bloody last, and it takes about a year to kill them. But these are really good cavalry units. Really good cavalry units. That high defense protects them in the charge, because the cavalry are actually at their most vulnerable when they charge. Newton's laws of physics. Every force exerts an equal and opposite force back. And that's the same in Medieval 2's battle statistics. So cavalry charging an enemy are likely to take damage themselves from said enemy. But the high defense of the Black Numenorians protects them from that. And their high attack just means they've got high attack, which is always nice. So that's it. That's Mordor's entire roster. Now, what I'm going to do is, as we've done before, I'm going to give everything to the AI, except for the beasts, which we'll take control of. And which one do I want? F6? Yeah. Start the battle. We are. Can you guess who we're up against? Can you tell what it is yet? Can you tell from this far away? Post your guesses and then tell me if you were right. I mean, you can cheat if you want, but it won't mean anything. There's not a very big roster out there, is there? I wonder if that's a clue. There's quite a lot of blue going on. Well, in case you guessed already, it's Ered Luin. The might of Nogrod marches across the lands of Enedwaith, Minhiriath, and Eriador. Normally, anyway. Depends what you want to do when you play as Ered Luin. And our army is just wigging out. Just really not having a good day. There's some Azagar's Tomb Protectors there. For those of you that don't know, and another little lore tidbit, Azaghal is a famous dwarf from the First Age who fought and died against Glaurung the Dragon, the greatest, and the game has crashed. I wonder if that was the axe throwers. Oh, that was probably the axe throwers. I'm going to have to fix that. I might as well just leave it there then, so apologies that you're not going to get an end to this, and the story was interrupted. I'll finish that in the Ered Luin video. So we didn't see them fight, but I don't want to have to set it all up again. And that crash is the axe throwers, which can be found and fixed easily by heading to the sub forum in the link below. going to the bug reporting thread, and in the first post there is a link to how to fix the axe throwers crashing the game. So you can fix it quite easily. But for now, that will be all. So I apologise that this has ended on a crash, but until we speak again, dear friends, na bhair na den pedimad melonin, and farewell.